In yesterday's video, I gave a couple of reasons why I think Paul included this portion of the letter, Romans 13, 1 through 7 specifically is what we are reviewing, why he included this in his letter. The first reason I gave was from a literary perspective. The second reason, and I guess that's for our benefit, but the second reason one of the reasons why Paul would have written this was historical. Today, I want to give a third reason, and I want to talk about that, but before I do, I want to give a couple of names from more recent history. Now, these names might not mean much to you, but you've probably heard them in the past. You just might not remember them. One of the names is Harold Camping. Now, Camping was a pastor from California who famously predicted that the world would end on May 11th, 2021. When it did not end, he said he miscalculated the date, and well, he tried to come up with another date for that, but ultimately, Camping died in 2015. The world had not ended then. The world has still not ended today, obviously. The second name is Jeong Rim. Now, Rim was a Korean leader of the Dami mission, and he organized a group to meet in October of 1992, again with the understanding that the world was to end. Now, this created all kinds of a crisis in Seoul, South Korea, and people started acting very, very strangely in anticipation of this. In fact, there's a story of one lady who had been trying to get pregnant for 3 years and was unable to do so, who aborted her baby 7 months into the pregnancy because she didn't think that women should be pregnant during the end times. Anyway, obviously, in October of 1992, the world did not end. A young boy famously said from the building at like 10 minutes after midnight, "Hey, nothing's happened yet." Well, it hadn't ended in 92. It hadn't ended in 2011. If you're watching this, it hasn't ended yet. So why do I mention these two men? Well, I could mention others, but the point is the same. When people talk about the end of the world, it causes people to act differently. Now, I absolutely believe that Jesus is going to return someday, and the world is going to end in relationship to that coming. Pre, post, mid, there's all kinds of debate that we can have with that. But it will happen. And it may happen very soon. But it hasn't happened yet. And if people begin to think that it's going to happen, then people change how they act. And to put that in perspective, let's think of what Paul has said in this last couple of chapters of Romans. We're in Romans 13, 1 through 7, but if we just go back to the transition point, the main transition in all of Romans, Romans chapter 12, at least from an application standpoint, we see here that Paul has said, "Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, don't conform to the pattern of this world," or a better word for that could be, don't be transformed by the pattern of this age. Meaning, don't get caught up with what's going on in the world. The world's going to end anyway. Start thinking about God-like things and focus there. Well, again, there's nothing wrong with that. And in response to what God has done for us, in view of God's mercy, as he starts Romans 12, that is an appropriate thing to do. But one pattern of the world is government. And in the book of Acts, we see leaders after Paul in Ephesus. We see them after Paul in Jerusalem. We see other instances, say in Lystra, or the people from Thessalonica chasing him throughout the region. So Paul is aware of how other leaders can respond to those who follow Christ. And likely now he is anticipating how people of Rome might respond to his writing about this law that they really can't keep anyway. Of course, Paul's referring to the law of Moses, but if you don't know the background, if you're a Roman and you pick up this letter, you might think, hey, he's saying you can't follow the Roman law. And Paul's saying not to be conformed to the pattern of this age. Again, the government is a pattern of this age. I mentioned the other day that God has instituted three things: the family, government, and the church, in that order. Realize that when this age ends, none of those will exist as we think of them now. There is no family unit in heaven. We are the family of God. We don't have our individual pocket units. As Jesus said in the story, there is no marriage in heaven at that point. Mark chapter 12, for instance. The government, we won't need a government. Jesus is ruling. And we won't need the church because the church, we will be with Jesus as the church, but we won't have what we think of constitutes the church in our world today. So again, I think that Paul absolutely, I conclude that Paul absolutely did write this section of Romans. He may not have needed to, but I think it was very prudent for him to do it, and I think he realized that with the second reason I gave yesterday from the historical perspective and from the practical reason that I just gave a moment ago. These verses, Romans 13, 1 through 7, do fit those two ideas as well as the literary perspective I covered yesterday. And those same principles that Paul wrote about then are still true for us today. As we begin to focus our minds on more things of God, it does still cause people to abandon the life that they are supposed to live until God says, come. Again, I will share a quick story from Jesus, who said there would be two people in the field. One will remain, one will not. They were working together. They were functioning together. That is what will happen, or that will happen when the world comes. We need to be ready. We need to be focused. But in the meantime, we need to have our one eye on God and our feet in the world, working and carrying on our lives until He decides to come again.